SMT Nation, we back. Nation, as promised, we have the deep dive for the Ookla speed test reports from Q4 2023. What we're looking for is a future look into what this data tells us in the near term and what it means moving forward in the next quarter or two, because I believe, and I think several of you out there, after looking at the data, are probably starting to think about some of the same things I am. And we're starting to project maybe T-Mobile is going to be throned as the 5G speed king, as the 5G network leader. Let's take a look at all these numbers on a deeper than surface level, and let's see what we can gather from it. The Ookla report will be provided down in the description. I'll put the link down there for you guys so you can kind of follow along to see what we have. We're going to be covering everything from T-Mobile, AT&T, and Verizon, see where they all stack up, and see how they're going to be performing near term and in the future. All right, guys, let's do this. This is going to be a cool video. Chapter markers are in the description. Chapter markers are in the description and also built into the timeline of the video. Ways to support us down in the description as well. All right, first thing we're going to do is take a look at the download speeds for the total network. This means all technologies, not just 5G. This also includes LTE. All right, T-Mobile taking the cake. Still the network speed king on a national scale, according to the speed test taken on the Ookla speed test app. 189 megabits per second. Verizon came in at 91 and AT&T just below 91. All right, so not much separating Verizon and AT&T. All right, and for a while AT&T was up there beyond Verizon, and then Verizon with C-band, it's clearly made a difference, and their network is getting more modern, and it's starting to show. Now, T-Mobile has been at this whole 5G network building thing for several years. The T-Mobile and Sprint merger, essentially a 5G stimulus package, allowed them to really enjoy this lead, and you could see they're still far ahead on a national scale in total networking speed. So that's downlink speed. Now, when I look at the data from previous quarters, I just had to go back, crunch some of those numbers and find them. Last quarter, T-Mobile was at 169. So T-Mobile still found some room for improvement. So that's really encouraging, from 169 to basically 189. Verizon went from 76 to 92, and then AT&T went from 73 to 91. We have improving networks, folks. They're building more capacity. That's more tower sites. That's more C-RAN. That's upgraded fiber circuits. That's more modernized cell towers with antennas and radios. This is a good thing. The carriers are building better networks. Let's go ahead and scroll down to the overall uplink speed. T-Mobile at 12, Verizon at 10, AT&T at 8. This is really the weakest link of networks, in my opinion. It's harder to do than downlink speed. You don't have the same amount of bandwidth. You don't get the same power levels. You don't get the carrier aggregation, the same technology suite. So, it's a tougher situation. T-Mobile actually improved their uplink from 11.3 to 12.2. Verizon improved theirs from 8.6 to 10. And then AT&T improved their uplink speed from 7 to 8 megabits. So they're still improving those, although a little bit slower. It is getting a little bit better, and that's a good thing. So, people need uplink. You're doing video calls, you're doing FaceTime, uploading content. You got to have uplink. We should see a steep increase here in 5G networking when you look at the numbers. The multi-server speeds, it's not really something I care too much about, only because they're all so very close. We're talking about milliseconds here. T-Mobile at 50, Verizon at 57. That is a nominal difference, right? You couldn't even feel 7 milliseconds, right? So AT&T's at 64. That might be meaningful to some folks, I suppose. T-Mobile's flat. They went from 50 to 50. Verizon last quarter was at 59. They improved to 57. And AT&T improved from 68 to 64. So I guess that's encouraging. Those numbers dropping a bit. This is the consistency metric. The consistency metric is the percentage of tests that we're able to achieve at least 5 megabits down, 1 megabits up. So this tells me that is a usable connection. Now, the one thing this doesn't show, and this is why I don't like this test, it doesn't count the number of failed tests. That's the thing about Ookla. If it's a failed test, they throw it out. They don't count it. So I think that would be important in a consistency test. So I really wish they would have that, but they don't include it. All right, so T-Mobile came in at 87.3, Verizon at 83.7, and then AT&T at 81.3. So T-Mobile the most consistent according to that 5 megabit down, 1 megabit up metric. Verizon coming in at 83.7. And I would say that Verizon's probably going to start closing that gap, folks. I think we're going to start seeing a situation where Verizon is going to be knocking on that 86, 87% mark on the next set of testing, which would be Q1 of 24. I really do. I mean, as that network gets more modern, less than 5 megabit is going to become a thing of the past. So with densification, with upgraded radios and tower sites and stuff like that, I don't expect, a 5 megabit, not even a 5 megabit down or 1 megabit up to be just so uncommon, right? And to T-Mobile's respect and AT&T's respect, I mean, they should all be over 90% in my estimation, right? All right, now here's your video score. T-Mobile at 78, Verizon at 74, AT&T at 71. I've never really had issues with video performance from any of the big carriers. Actually, I kind of have a different experience. I don't have video issues with Verizon at all. I mean, I'm connected to 5G ultra-wideband most of the time. It's a very capacitive, enjoyable experience. AT&T is probably the best when it comes to playing video content in my experience. And I'm talking about Ohio, my market, stuff like that. Obviously, it's not national, but it's worth mentioning, I do sometimes on occasion have some trouble with T-Mobile on my home site. So my experience is different than Ookla. But anyways, there's those numbers. All right, now we get into 5G video score. Now here's what I want to mention. The carrier that has very aggressively marketed their network, their 5G network, as the 5G network in the industry, right? Theirs is the one. Is T-Mobile. And, they always will, tell you in their branding and their marketing. Largest 5G network, most available 5G network, fastest 5G network. Everything they've done for the last several years has been centered around their 5G network prowess and excellence. So, 5G video score, 81.54, Verizon at 79.67, AT&T at 73.3. This is where T-Mobile can say these types of things as long as their numbers are higher. But they're not higher by much, and the gap for these categories continues to get smaller and smaller. Verizon is very, very close to the point where it's almost negligible, right? And it's going to be tougher for T-Mobile to sell in their marketing that, their 5G network is a separating or distinguishing factor in a consumer decision. So things are starting to get kind of tight if you're looking at some of these numbers, especially in 5G networking. Here's the 5G download speed, and this is where things get kind of interesting. So if you look at the 5G download speeds for T-Mobile, they're at 238.87. Let's call it 239. If we go back to last quarter, so Q3 2024, that number was 221. That's a nice little increase. That's good for T-Mobile. But if I go back to Q2 of 2023, the number was 220. So they only went up 1 megabit per second on the median downlink between those two quarters. And then in the most recent one, they improved by about 18 megabits. So that's a nice bump, but they didn't move before. How much faster can T-Mobile actually get? I mean, they're just going to have to reinvest into the network in order to do so. Now, don't get me wrong. I do think in the quarters in the future, they will still increase their speeds. T-Mobile's doing a couple things, guys. Right? They're still building some new tower sites where they don't have native coverage, where they have coverage issues, or they have capacity needs, right? So they're still building tower sites. Maybe not at the same pace as some of the other carriers, but they're still doing that. We hear about a small cell build potentially coming down the pipeline. We know that T-Mobile is starting to scale the 10 gig fiber circuits more. Those things are going to help those download speeds. Don't forget, T-Mobile is getting Spectrum Auction 108 spectrum soon. That should help a little bit. They do have DoD and C-band spectrum licenses that they can hang antennas and radios for. Those should offer a little bit of a boost. So my expectation is, in a very nominal, kind of incremental way, T-Mobile should continue to increase their download speeds slightly. All right, so maybe the next report we see, they might be at 245. I think the upside is maybe 250, and that'll be really good for them. Okay, so nice job by T-Mobile there, able to boost their speeds a bit. Now, here's where things get really interesting, and that is the Verizon angle. They came in at 196 megabits per second for their download speeds on 5G. The previous number was 153 in Q3, and the previous number before that was 133. Let's let that sink in there. They have increased their speeds by a pretty large margin for their metrics pretty quick. They've gone from 133 to 196 in a half a year. What has Verizon been doing? Upgrading tower sites with C-band, upgrading tower sites with 10 gig fiber circuits, adding new tower sites, fully modernizing their network, right? They're doing all those things. They're upgrading their small cells. They're building new small cells. They've gone from 60 megahertz of C-band to 100 to 140. Some of the markets that don't have C-band yet are going to get those very soon. 2024 is going to be a year where, Verizon's going to try like hell to fully nationalize, like on a geographic range type of thing for their C-band. And a lot of those untouched markets, Verizon has 180 or 200 megahertz of C-band. I mean, they are going to get much faster very quickly. My expectation is that Verizon, within the next 2 quarters, is probably going to pass T-Mobile in this speed metric for 5G download speeds. I think it's inevitable by mid-year. I don't think it's that far away. I mean, it's possible that they do it in Q1. It's possible they get pretty close. Like I said, I think T-Mobile's going to end up around 245 or 250. I think Verizon's going to be close. I think they're going to be like 230, 235. So where you see T-Mobile in this report, I think that's where Verizon's going to be on the next report. They're moving really, really quickly, guys. They're spending money. They have, an $18 billion CapEx. That's a CapEx that T-Mobile has never had. Verizon does that every year, right? I mean, AT&T, for respect to their network, got to call a spade a spade. They've improved their speeds as well. They've gone from 86 2 quarters ago to 101 last quarter, and now 126. So even they're pacing their C-band upgrades and their DoD upgrades. So respect to them for doing the upgrades as well. They're just not to the pace of Verizon, right? And we know that T-Mobile got the 5G stimulus package with the merger, allowed them to jump ahead, and that's where all this has kind of come from. But I don't think that T-Mobile could really stay the fastest carrier beyond like May or June. When we get the reports in July from Ookla, I think it's going to indicate the speed crown will be on Verizon's head. And it's not to say there's anything wrong with that. I mean, I still think the T-Mobile network has come a long way and deserves some respect because of what they've been able to do over the last 4 years. But clearly, there's just a different pace to what Verizon is doing. And Verizon's doing things a little differently, right? Verizon is creating capacity to monetize their 5G home internet. T-Mobile's selling excess capacity. Just look at the CapEx, like T-Mobile's going to be around 9-10 billion. Verizon has almost double that, so it's just a scale thing. It's just a budget thing. Here's the 5G latency speeds if you guys want to see them. T-Mobile at 48, Verizon 52, and AT&T 63. 5G consistency, you can't even tell them apart. T-Mobile's at 76.7, Verizon's at 76.3. AT&T a little bit further behind at 68.8. Folks, it's clear, it's obvious. T-Mobile had their time as the 5G speed king. I think next quarter, when we see the Q1 reports, it'll still be them, but it won't be them by much. And I think by Q2, it's a wrap. And advertising that you have the most 5G, you probably can say that probably for another 3 quarters. And then I think by the end of the year, it's almost negligible, whatever that lead might be. And then when it comes to the speeds, it ain't going to be beyond the next few months, And for some bonus coverage, I know you guys probably care about some of these things. With respect to the fastest phones, some of you guys really care about hardware, right? The best phones you could have for cellular connectivity. The iPhone 15 Pro Max, shining, the only phone device with median download speeds over 200 megabits, right? 213. The iPhone 15 Pro at 189, right? So the Pro Max faster for whatever reason. The Galaxy Z Fold 4, 185. The 23 Ultra, 181. And then Apple's iPhone 15 at 172. So there's your phones for speeds. Here's your manufacturer. Samsung generally faster, 113 on the down. Apple, 103. Upload speed, same thing. Samsung a little faster. And then here's your Snapdragons. These are your modems, right? Snapdragon X70 modem leads the way at 205 for median download speed. Uplink at 14. The Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 comes in at 173 and 13 respectively. All right, regional speeds to give you guys a little bit of extra coverage. Top 10, starting with Illinois, North Dakota, Rhode Island, Minnesota, Nevada, DC, New Jersey, Arizona, New York, and Utah. Let's see where Ohio stacks up. We're number 15. Woohoo! We got fast speeds. And then with respect to city speeds, the top 10, Glendale, Arizona, Plano, Texas, St. Paul, Indianapolis, Chandler, Arizona, Raleigh, Bakersfield, California, Nashville, Gilbert, Scottsdale, Arizona. I see a lot of Arizona in this list. Mesa in there as well. Shout out to Columbus, number 17. Cleveland at number 26. Pittsburgh, shout out to Dennis, number 31. And Vegas, shout out to the homie Carlos S. Tech, coming in at number 32. All right, so those are some of the numbers. Again, I got all those things down in the timeline if you guys want to check them out. But I think it has become abundantly clear T-Mobile's going to have to pivot. I think part of their marketing is going to have to be centered around something other than this largest 5G network, fastest 5G network, if indeed this is not accurate. That's the one thing you got to do in marketing, right? You have to be able to back up your claims, because I think consumers have gotten to the point where they kind of understand what all these things are. You could say what you want to say, but when the customer uses the product and the services, it has to match. Otherwise, they're calling wolf tickets. And up until this point, T-Mobile hasn't really been selling wolf tickets when it comes to speeds. The data has suggested they have had the fastest network. I think there just comes a point, their 5G network, while it may be one of the fastest, I don't think it's going to be the fastest for much longer. And the data seems to prove it. But what do you guys think? If and when do you think T-Mobile will lose its, king of the speed test crown to Verizon? I think it's inevitable. I think it's coming. I think you too, but you might think differently. What say you? Sound off in the comment section below. You're the voice of the people, the SMT Nation. Let your voice be heard.